Hello and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Gugulethu Cele. Now today I'm joined in studio by Caroline Marwisa, personal finance expert and author of the book Master Your Finances. Now today we'll be taking a look at practical lessons and advice that consumers can implement in their lives as we head into the holiday season with just a few more months to go. Thereafter, we know that it's the new year. We will all be making all sorts of resolutions when it comes to our finances. And Caroline, that's why you're here today, to guide us through the journey, as difficult as it is. But good to have you with us this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I want us to come back to the crux of the book and where it took an emotional experience, losing your nephew, which actually made you realize that money somehow does play an element in all the important decisions we have to take in our lives.
Absolutely, Gugu, and thank you for having me on the show. It's quite an honor. So personal finance is quite key. I mean, you know, one of these personal finance experts has got a quote where he says that, you know, money may not be the most important thing in life. However, it impacts on every important aspect of life. And I certainly felt it when we had the unfortunate situation with my nephew, who was born with a very rare condition called congenital diaphragmic hernia, which saw him in ICU for the 5 months of his life, you know, before he eventually passed on. So, you know, there were key moments in that whole experience that made us realize as a family that, you know, money, regardless of how you want to think about it, is quite key and quite important. And so it did motivate me to push
exactly
on finishing the book. Yes.
Well, we're grateful that you did, because clearly now you're teaching a lot of other people about the importance of managing their finances effectively. And one thing that you allude to is understanding your lifestyle and how that also has an impact on the balance sheet basically of an individual. How does the two actually bridge together?
Okay, so the first point in actually managing one's personal finance involves actually understanding where you are, what's happening with your finances. And part of that is understanding, you know, how much you're earning, how much you are spending, and where it's being spent, where you are currently in terms of your assets and your liabilities. And there's a tool that we share even on our website that's called a net worth calculation worksheet. And what that does is it gives you a picture, and all it is a measure of where you are in terms of, you know, building your wealth to
Let's
date.
tell the truth though, Caroline. We're all too scared to know where we actually stand with our finances, just in case we've been living a lie and there's an illusion that we have all this money, but we actually don't. We have a lot more liabilities than what's actually coming through.
Absolutely. Right? And I mean, you know, sooner better than later, isn't it? So, you know, better just face it. I mean, and it's not the end of the world. With the right strategy, with the right kind of support structure, we can all be well on our way to financial freedom.
So where should we start? In the last few months of the year, the holiday season is coming up. Thereafter, 2016 brings a new year with its own resolutions. For those who maybe have fallen by the wayside when it comes to managing their finances in 2015, does it start with that net worth calculation right now and saying, this is where I'm going to take the lead and, you know, charge from when it comes to building up my wealth?
So Gugu, I'd actually take it a step backwards, depending, you know, because personal finance is a very personal aspect. So one has to look at what's currently happening. I mean, if you've never actually sat down to look at your finances, to look at what's happening in your bank account, what I'd recommend is, you know, to just sit down, take the last 3 months' bank statements and go through each item, and then categorize what's happening. Where's your money going? How much money are you earning? How much money are you saving and investing? And, you know, how much of your cash flow do you have left at the end of the month? Then you move on to working out where you are, because your net worth calculation just tells you, it's an indication of where you are. And there are, you know, there's a formula you can actually apply to work out where you need to be if you're actually, you know, going to be financially free and not rely on, you know, maybe your job, you know, and actually build a nest egg of assets that will then take care of you going forward. So your net worth calculation is a measure, that's all it is. So if it's below 0, I speak about it in the book, it's not, you know, cause to panic, but it's cause to actually then start implementing measures to address that. And once you've done that, ideally one wants to get to a stage where what you're earning, you're only spending a component of that.
Yes.
And there's a component that's going towards saving and investing for the future. And one area where I'm quite passionate, because I truly believe that we can never live fulfilled lives unless we start overflowing to other people. There are so many problems in the world, and regardless of your level of income, there's someone else who's worse off. So if we get to a stage where we can do all three, then I truly believe that we can live, fulfilled lives.
Exactly. Tell us about that particular calculation. I know that there's a 60-odd ratio, 15 elsewhere, but particular numbers that allude to the different pots in which you should be distributing your income. So of the 10,000 Rand odd that I earn a month, how much of that should I be saving, should be going to retirement, should be covering my risk, should be going to, other expenses as well, or emergency savings funds?
Right. So, basically the rule of thumb that I use, it's a financial planning principle that I've adapted a bit. So I say, at least 65%, you should not be spending more than 65% of what you're earning. So 6,500, your lifestyle needs to fit into that. And then you've got the 2,000 rands that needs to go away for the future. That's your saving, that's your investing. And there's a whole, strategy around that. Like you alluded to, initially everyone needs to have an emergency fund in case anything happens and you lose your source of income. And then I talk about the 10 and the 15%, and I believe the 10 is the tithe and the 5% is where we actually overflow to others.
Exactly. So we need to work within those particular measures. If my income is not increasing, does that automatically mean that I need to review my expenses and maybe spend less on those shoes, cut the credit card, store account? Gosh, Caroline.
Look, if you read chapter 9, my approach is slightly different, because I understand that, people are very unique. So, and I speak about a colleague of mine, I love her to bits. She loves shoes. So to tell her to cut on shoes just won't work.
Yeah.
She won't be happy, she won't be motivated going to work, generating the income. So what I say is, as long as you've budgeted for it, budget for it, and then, satisfy yourself. But what's quite important is to understand who you are. So if shoes mean that much to you, then at least be conscious about the choices you're making and budget for them and go out and get them. And, it shouldn't be just about the fact that everyone else is doing this or everyone else is doing that. But what I prefer to focus on is the income bit, because I think the cost cutting and the managing your spending has been, it's difficult, but I think it's been thrashed out to death. And I feel that we're missing a huge component where we can actually motivate people to start looking deeper into themselves, to ask themselves whether what it is that they are doing, the amount of income they're generating, is all that they can make. Because I truly feel that a lot of people only operate at a fraction of the capacity that they can actually operate at. So, there's a lot that can be done to actually increase the income, so that you don't have to worry about cutting, expenses. Because, let's face it, standard of living is quite high.
Yeah.
So, you can only cut so much. And I feel that in this day and age, it's quite critical for people to get to a stage where they become creative, they actually utilize their full potential. Because, let's face it, there are opportunities out there. And, it is an abundant world. And people need to, start digging deep inside themselves. And also going out of their comfort zones, to venture out, to actually see what else they can do, and you'll actually be surprised.
Exactly. So I can do this and bake cupcakes on the side too, if that's what my passion really is.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to come on to something else, which is covering your risk. And so often when we speak to financial planners like yourself and advisors, they often say that that's an important element that so often a lot of younger consumers tend to forget, those under the age of 35 or even 40. And that's your medical insurance, insurance for your items that you own, insurance for your life as well, should anything happen to you. How critical is that? And is that the missing link sometimes? Because you want to generate wealth, but protect it at the same time.
Absolutely. So I speak about the fact that assets are what will grow your wealth in the long run. And there's 3 categories of assets that I speak about. It's firstly yourself, so trying to maximize your potential. Then it's the assets that you can build, like sitting down and writing a book, sitting down, building a business, and then letting that generate income going into the future. And the third aspect is assets that you can actually buy or invest into. And then there's a fourth category, which I don't really want to publicize, but you know, it does happen for the lucky few, where people win lotteries or they get huge inheritances. You know, that's a fortuitous, you know, category of assets. But with that, if you look at it, I mean, I wish life was perfect, but it's not, and I'm an optimist at heart. So, you know, with yourself, there are chances that things can happen to you that will prevent you from making that income or from continuing to generate that income. You could fall ill, so you need medical cover. You could get disabled, you need disability cover. You could actually die, and then you've got dependents that are, you know, that are depending on you. You need to look into life cover. I mean, there's an example that is quite close to my heart, where you find people, you know, having lived a certain standard of living. The family is comfortable, they're used to a certain standard of living, and the house is bonded, the car is on a car loan. But they forget that, you know, perhaps it's just the man who's generating the income. And in the unfortunate situation that man actually passes on, you know, the banks or whoever is owed money will come and collect their items. And the family now is left, you know, in a very difficult situation. So, you know, there are other things that we don't quite consider, because as people, we don't want to think about the negative aspects of life. So, you know, I would say if you know that, you know, your house is still bonded, your car is still, you know, is still on a car loan, at least obtain that life cover, at least to cover those, you know, those items, so that in the unfortunate event that, you know, you pass on, your family can still enjoy the standard of living that they were comfortable with.
Exactly.
You know, with the different assets also, there's also theft. You can get into car accidents. There's acts of God. I mean, when was it, last year or 2 years ago, we had that hailstorm.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, and a lot of, you know, insurance claims went through for that.
Exactly.
So, you know, so insurance cover is quite critical in terms of managing one's risk.
Exactly. Caroline, we do have to wrap up the show, but in 30 seconds, I take it, for those who want to get started and get into action, have a realistic outlook on your financial position, and then, more importantly, where you find difficulty, seek advice.
Absolutely. Critical. I mean, you know, you hear a lot of people talking about the cost of financial planners, but, you know, I just wish, and again, you know, it's a very personal, you know, choice and decision for each individual. But the things to consider is, you know, we all know that going to gym is very good for us, and we all understand the health benefits, but how many people actually make it to gym? B, there are those, you know, emotions of greed and fear that then, you know, cause you to either put your money in one basket or end up not investing in what you perceive as risky investments. And in the end, you actually lose out. So having someone else, a financial planner, who's got your best interest at heart, will actually then, you know, take out that emotion and have someone else to hold you accountable. And I mean, lastly, you know, which is quite obvious, financial products in the financial industry is quite complex. And a lot of us do not have the skills or the time for that matter to actually, you know, perform the analysis.
Exactly. Caroline, unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us this evening. A big thank you to Caroline Marwisa, who is a personal finance expert and author of Master Your Finances, for joining us this evening. Do remember that we want to hear from you, and tell us how you're feeling as we're in the months heading up to the holiday season. Are your finances in check? Well, tell us and tweet any of your comments or suggestions to @CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410, or to myself @Gugulethu on Twitter. Until next time, have a wonderful evening.